So it's great to be here today. It's interesting about today because we really didn't talk about the show at all until it was released. So it's been very fun and thrilling to be talking about our work after a period of making it and releasing it. Looks like Jessica Lange. He played Jessica Lange's son. And on the first day of Evan's shooting, we were like, holy shit, this kid can act. So to go, for me, from that moment with Evan to this moment in time where he's being compared to and seen and talked about in the same breath as Robert De Niro and Marlon Brando and Leonardo DiCaprio, I could not be more proud of you and thankful that you're in my life. This was a show that was really daunting and difficult. The subject matter was incredibly difficult. And to be honest, we were casting the show for 6 months and we saw a lot of people. And there was just something missing. And so I remember saying to my casting director, I'm gonna call Evan. And I did, and Evan was very quiet. And I said, just read them. So Evan, when you read those first couple scripts, can you talk about what went through your head and how you considered taking this part, and then how did you prepare for the role of Jeffrey Dahmer?
Well, thanks for saying all that, first of all. You sent it to me, and I read it, and first of all, the writing was brilliant, and I was terrified. I really went back and forth on whether I should do it or not. I knew it was going to be incredibly dark, an incredible challenge. But you recommended that I watch the Dateline Stone Phillips interview, and in that, you really see how he speaks about what he did, and I was fascinated by that, and I wanted to dive into the psychology of that extreme side of human behavior. So I read as many books as I could, psychology reports, confessions, timelines, all in an attempt to try to understand why he did what he did. And then, of course, there was the physical side.
Yeah, talk about the physicality, because at one point, you wore lead weights around your arms and you wore lifts in your shoes and you practiced that walk, and you basically stayed in this character, as difficult as it was, for months.
Yeah, I mean, we did 4 months of prep, 6 months of shooting, and he's a very straight back. He doesn't move his arms when he walks, so I put weights on my arms to see what that felt like. I wore the character's shoes with lifts in it, his jeans, his glasses. I had a cigarette in my hand at all times. I wanted all this stuff, these external things, to be second nature when we were shooting. So I watched a lot of footage, and I also worked with a dialect coach to get down his voice, the way that he spoke. It was very distinct, and he had a dialect. So I also went off and created this 45-minute audio composite, which was very helpful, and I listened to that every day in hopes of learning his speech patterns, but really an attempt to try to get into his mindset and understand that each day that we were shooting. So it was an exhaustive search, trying to find private moments, things where he didn't seem self-conscious, so you could get a glimpse into how he behaved prior to these interviews and being in prison.
Right. And one of the things I remember when we finished it, you called me up and you said, well, I gave it my all. I gave it 120%, which I'm here to say you did. Interestingly enough, this is one of the first times we've all gotten together, and the other night, Nisi went up to Evan and said, Evan Peters, nice to meet you, even though they had worked together for months, because Nisi, you can talk about that. Like, it was, yeah, Evan was so deep in character.
So deep in character. People will say, what is Evan like? And I'm like, I don't know the man. Because in his process, I respected his need to keep the distance and the tension so that it played out on screen as opposed, because I'm coming in initially like, hey, how you doing? Good morning, and he was like, oh, no, ma'am, and so I was like, oh. And then I realized, I said, oh, he's in his process.
Evan, just briefly before we move on, can you talk about how you got out of it? Because you said that you had watched Step Brothers recently, and like everybody always thinks of Evan as dark and brooding, and I'm like, absolutely not. Evan is hilarious. He's spent Thanksgivings at my house. My children have sat on his knee. He's such a lovely guy. But can you talk about it? Was a big responsibility, but coming out of it, what did you do?
Yeah, it was, well, you know, doing the role, I wanted to give it 120% the whole way through, so I brought in a lot of darkness and negativity, and so really it was just having that end goal in sight, you know, knowing when we were going to wrap, and finally being able to breathe and let it go and say, okay, now it's time to bring in the joy and the lightness and watch comedies and romances and go back to St. Louis and see my family and friends and watch Step Brothers, you know.
Evan Peters, me and you in a rom-com right after this.
Let's go. I'm down. I think having the end goal in sight, you know, knowing that the project is going to be finished, pacing it out, I think was helpful. You know, I have all sorts of different things that I do in my everyday life to keep me happy, functioning, a normal person. You know, it's at the end of the day, it is a job, and you sort of have to compartmentalize. And so I think, you know, when I go home, sometimes it's or rather after the shoot, it was comedies and you know, lighthearted things, songs, music, making music. So all those things really help to keep me afloat.
St. Louis?
Yeah.
Where'd you go to high school?
I didn't go to high school.
Oh, exactly.